piercing scream cuts through the harvest ball as the host collapses, poisoned. Can Miss Marple untangle the killer's deadly web of lies before they strike again? Grab a cup of tea, settle in for the mystery, and if you love the thrill, subscribe to our channel for more. Chapter 1. The Invitation to St. Mary Mead's Harvest Baller. Folks, let's dive right into the heart of our tale set in the quaint English village of St. Mary Mead, where life usually ambles along like a lazy river, but tonight it's about to hit some rapids. Our story kicks off with Miss Jane Marple, that sharp-eyed spinster who's solved more mysteries from her knitting chair than most detectives do in a lifetime. She's in her cozy cottage, surrounded by the familiar hum of village life, the distant chime of church bells, the rustle of her garden roses against the window pane. Miss Marple, with her fluffy white hair pinned neatly and her blue eyes twinkling behind spectacles, is sipping her afternoon tea when the postman delivers an elegant envelope. It's an invitation to the annual harvest ball at the Grand Estate of Colonel Reginald Hargrove, a retired military man known for his booming voice and his prize-winning pumpkins. Now, why is this invitation so intriguing? Well, St. Mary Mead isn't exactly buzzing with high society events, but the Harvest Ball is the highlight of the season. Picture it. The Hargrove Manor lit up like a fairy tale castle, with strings of lanterns dangling from ancient oaks, tables groaning under heaps of apple pies, roasted meats, and fresh-baked bread. Villagers from all walks mingle, farmers in their best tweeds, ladies in flowing gowns, even the local vicar swapping stories over mulled wine. But Miss Marple senses something off right away. The colonel, you see, has been feuding with half the village over land disputes and old wartime grudges. His wife, the elegant but icy Lady Eleanor Hargrove, rumours say, has her own secrets, perhaps involving a dashing young artist who's been painting the estate's landscapes a bit too intimately. As Miss Marple sets the invitation down, she recalls a conversation from the village shop just yesterday. Mrs. Price Ridley, the gossipy busybody with a nose for scandal, was whispering about how the colonel's nephew, young Timothy Hargrove, fresh from university and drowning in gambling debts, had been spotted arguing with his uncle in the pub. "Mark my words," Mrs. Price Ridley had said. "That boy's trouble, and the colonel's will is up for grabs." Miss Marple smiles faintly. People always underestimate the power of village chatter. It's like threads in a tapestry. Pull one, and the whole picture emerges. That evening, as the sun dips low, casting golden hues over the thatched roofs, Miss Marple prepares for the ball. She chooses a simple lavender dress, nothing flashy, but with a brooch that once belonged to her aunt, a subtle reminder of her own family's hidden histories. Her niece Joan pops by to help with her hair. Joan, a modern woman with bobbed hair and a job in London as an illustrator, teases her aunt about attending such an old-fashioned affair. "Aunt Jane, you're not going to play detective again, are you? It's just a dance." Miss Marple chuckles softly. "My dear, in a village like this, every gathering is a stage, and people reveal more in a waltz than in a confession. The ball begins under a crisp autumn sky, stars twinkling like diamonds scattered on velvet. Guests arrive in carriages and motor cars, laughter echoing as they step into the manor's grand hall, adorned with sheaves of wheat, gourds, and flickering candles. The orchestra strikes up a lively tune, and couples swirl across the polished floor. Colonel Hargrove, resplendent in his old uniform with medals gleaming, greets everyone with a hearty handshake. "Welcome, one and all. Let the harvest spirit fill your hearts." His voice booms, but Miss Marple notices the strain in his eyes, the way his hand trembles slightly as he lifts a glass of punch. Seated in a corner with her knitting needles clicking away, a perfect cover for observation, Miss Marple surveys the room. There's the Colonel's daughter, Amelia, a shy girl of 20 with wide eyes and a crush on the village doctor, Dr. Haydock, who's here tonight looking dapper but distracted. Amelia's been acting oddly lately, sneaking off to the woods, perhaps, meeting someone forbidden. Then there's the estate manager, Mr. Silas Blackwood, a sly fellow with a moustache like a fox's tail, who's been accused of skimming profits from the harvest yields. He hovers near the buffet, eyes darting as if expecting trouble. As the night progresses, the air grows warmer, filled with the aroma of spiced cider and wood smoke from the outdoor bonfire. Dancers laugh and twirl, but tensions simmer beneath the surface. Miss Marple overhears snippets, Lady Eleanor snapping at Timothy about his reckless ways, the Colonel grumbling to Dr. Haydock about betrayals close to home. Even the vicar, Reverend Clement, seems uneasy, fidgeting with his collar as he chats with Mrs. Price Ridley, who's spreading tales about a missing heirloom necklace from the Hargrove family vault. Suddenly, midway through a spirited polka, the Colonel raises his glass for a toast. To the bountiful harvest, and to friends old and new. He takes a swig, then another. The room cheers, but within moments, his face pales, his hand clutches his throat. Poison! It's... He gasps, collapsing in a heap amid screams and shattering glass. Chaos erupts, guests freeze, the music halts abruptly. Dr. Haydock rushes forward, loosening the Colonel's collar, but it's too late. He's dead, the doctor announces grimly. Cyanide, by the smell of it. Someone's murdered him right under our noses. The room buzzes with shock. Lady Eleanor faints dramatically into Timothy's arms. Amelia bursts into tears, and Mr. Blackwood slips toward the door, only to be stopped by the arriving constable. Miss Marple, unflappable as ever, sets her knitting aside and approaches the body discreetly. She notes the punch bowl nearby, the Colonel's glass half empty, and a faint almond scent lingering in the air. Classic cyanide. But who had access? Everyone, really. But motives abound. Was it Timothy, desperate for inheritance? Lady Eleanor, tired of her husband's affairs? Or something deeper, tied to the village's buried secrets? As the police arrive and begin questioning guests, Miss Marple retreats to the shadows, her mind already piecing together clues like a jigsaw puzzle. The harvest ball, meant for joy, has turned deadly, and she knows this is just the beginning. The poison was quick, but the truth, that will take unraveling layers of deceit, one thread at a time. Whew, what a setup, right? We've met our key players and witnessed the shocking crime. But hold on, because in the next chapter, we'll delve into the initial investigations where Miss Marple starts noticing those little inconsistencies that everyone else misses. Stay tuned. Chapter 2. Shadows of Suspicion. The Hargrove Manor, once alive with music and laughter, now hums with a different energy, tense, electric, like the air before a storm. The grand hall feels smaller, the flickering candles casting long shadows that seem to whisper secrets. Miss Marple sits quietly on a velvet upholstered chair near the fireplace, her hands folded neatly in her lap, her eyes scanning the room with the precision of a hawk. The police, led by the earnest but slightly bumbling Inspector Craddock, have cordoned off the area around the Colonel's body, now covered with a white sheet. Guests huddle in small groups, their faces a mix of shock and suspicion, whispering, theories about who could have slipped cyanide into the Colonel's drink. Miss Marple, unnoticed by most, listens to every word, her mind cataloguing details like a ledger. Inspector Craddock, a tall man with a moustache that seems to droop under the weight of the case, is questioning Lady Eleanor first. She's recovered from her faint, sitting ramrod straight on a chaise longue, her pale face composed but her fingers twisting a silk handkerchief. "I saw nothing unusual," she says, her voice clipped. "Reginald was perfectly fine until that dreadful moment." But Miss Marple notices the way Lady Eleanor's eyes flick toward the punch bowl, then quickly away, as if guarding a thought. The inspector scribbles in his notebook, unaware of the subtle gesture, but Miss Marple files it away. People, she knows, reveal themselves in the smallest movements. A glance, a pause, a tremor. Across the room, Timothy Hargrove paces near the tall windows, his boyish face pale, his hands stuffed in his pockets. He's muttering to himself, and Miss Marple catches fragments. "Didn't mean for this, not like this." She wonders if it's grief or guilt. Timothy's debts are no secret in St. Mary Mead, and the Colonel's fortune, rumoured to be substantial, would solve many problems. But would a nephew resort to murder so publicly? Miss Marple's not convinced. Timothy's impulsive, not calculating. Still, she notes his nervous energy, the way he avoids looking at his aunt, Lady Eleanor. Amelia Hargrove, the Colonel's daughter, sits alone on a bench near the orchestra's abandoned instruments, her hands clasped tightly. Her eyes are red from crying, but there's something else there. Fear, perhaps, or a secret she's holding too tightly. Miss Marple recalls seeing Amelia earlier, slipping out to the garden during the dancing, her shawl catching on a rosebush. Was she meeting someone? The village doctor, Dr. Haydock, hovers nearby now, offering her a glass of water, but his usual charm seems strained. Miss Marple wonders about their connection. Amelia's shy glances at him all evening suggest more than a patient-doctor relationship. Then there's Mr. Silas Blackwood, the estate manager, leaning against a pillar with a forced calm. His sharp eyes dart around, assessing everyone, and Miss Marple catches him slipping a small notebook into his pocket. What's he hiding? She knows he's been accused of mismanaging funds, and the Colonel had threatened to sack him just last week, according to the butcher's wife. Blackwood's too clever to act rashly, but clever men, Miss Marple knows, can be the most dangerous. The inspector moves on to question the staff, focusing on the young footman, Tommy, who served the punch. Tommy's barely 19, with freckles and a nervous stammer. I just poured the drinks, sir," he says, his voice shaking. "I didn't see nothing odd," but Miss Marple notices his hands, red and chapped, as if he's been scrubbing them vigorously. Could it be guilt, or just the cold water from the kitchen pump? She makes a mental note to check the servants' quarters later. The staff always know more than they let on. As the questioning continues, Miss Marple slips out to the terrace, where the cool night air carries the scent of damp earth and bonfire smoke. She wants a clearer view of the scene, away from the chaos. From here, she can see the punch bowl still on the table, untouched since the tragedy. The glassware glints under the chandelier, but one glass, the Colonel's, sits slightly apart, its rim faintly smudged. Was it wiped clean, or is it just a trick of the light? She also notices a small side door leading to the garden, slightly ajar. Someone could have slipped in or out unnoticed during the dancing. A rustle in the bushes catches her attention. It's the vicar, Reverend Clement, looking flustered as he emerges from the garden path. "Oh, Miss Marple," he exclaims, smoothing his disheveled hair. Just needed some air. Terrible business, this. His voice is too hearty, his smile too quick. Miss Marple nods politely, but her mind is racing. The vicar's not one for sneaking about, yet here he is, far from the crowd. Was he looking for something or someone in the garden? Back inside, the inspector gathers everyone to announce that no one can leave the manor until initial statements are taken. Groans ripple through the room, but Miss Marple sees opportunity. A locked-in group means no one can slip away to cover their tracks. She approaches Dr. Haydock, who's now checking the punch bowl under the inspector's orders. "Anything unusual, Doctor?" she asks casually. He hesitates, then shakes his head. "Just punch, Miss Marple. But the cyanide had to come from somewhere." His tone is guarded, and Miss Marple wonders if he's protecting someone, perhaps Amelia, or even himself. As the night deepens, the manor feels like a chessboard, each person a piece with their own moves and motives. Miss Marple returns to her chair, her calm exterior hiding a mind that's already spinning a web of possibilities. The poison was fast, but the truth is slow, revealed in glances, whispers, and the things left unsaid. She knows the key lies in understanding the relationships, the grudges, the loves, the betrayals that bind this village together. And so, as the clock strikes midnight, Miss Marple settles in, her eyes never leaving the room. The game is afoot, and she's ready to play her part. Next up, we'll follow her as she digs deeper, uncovering a clue that turns the investigation on its head. Stay with me. This mystery's just getting started. Chapter 3. A Clue in the Garden. The night has settled over Hargrove Manor like a heavy cloak, the air thick with suspicion and the faint chill of autumn. Inside, the grand hall buzzes with hushed voices and the clink of teacups as guests, unable to leave, are served refreshments to calm their nerves. Miss Marple, however, is not one to sit idly by. She excuses herself from the crowded room, her lavender dress blending into the shadows as she steps back onto the terrace. The garden beyond, bathed in moonlight, calls to her, not for its beauty, but for the secrets it might hold. She's noticed too many odd movements tonight. Amelia's earlier dash into the rose bushes, the vicar's flustered return from the path. Something out here, she senses, is key to unravelling the Colonel's murder. The garden is a maze of neatly trimmed hedges, gravel paths, and flower beds bursting with late-blooming chrysanthemums. Miss Marple moves carefully, her sensible shoes crunching softly on the gravel. She heads toward the spot where she saw Amelia earlier, near a stone bench tucked behind a trellis of climbing roses. The moonlight casts dappled patterns, and as she nears, she spots something glinting on the ground, a small silver cigarette case, half buried in the mulch. She bends down, careful not to touch it, and examines it closely. It's engraved with the initials R.H., Reginald Hargrove, no doubt. But the Colonel didn't smoke, not since his army days. So why is his cigarette case here, far from the ballroom? Miss Marple straightens, her mind turning. The case could have been dropped by someone else, someone who borrowed it, or stole it. She scans the area and notices a faint trail of disturbed earth leading toward a small greenhouse tucked at the garden's edge. The greenhouse, she recalls, is where the Colonel grew his prized orchids, a hobby he guarded jealously. She makes her way there, her breath visible in the cool air. The glass door is unlocked, slightly ajar, and she steps inside, the humid air heavy with the scent of damp soil and exotic blooms. Inside the greenhouse is a jungle of green, with shelves of orchids in vibrant purples and whites. But Miss Marple's attention is drawn to a workbench in the corner, cluttered with gardening tools, fertilizer bags, and a small vial labelled potassium cyanide. Her heart quickens. Cyanide, the very poison that killed the colonel. It's not uncommon in greenhouses, used for pest control, but its presence here is too convenient. She notices a smudge of dirt on the vial's cap, as if someone handled it recently, and a torn piece of fabric caught on a nearby shelf. A scrap of lace, fine and delicate, like something from a lady's gown. Footsteps crunch outside, and Miss Marple quickly steps behind a row of plants. It's Dr. Haydock, his face pale in the moonlight as he enters the greenhouse, looking around nervously. He doesn't see her, hidden as she is, but she watches as he picks up the vial, examines it, then slips it into his coat pocket. Foolish, he mutters to himself, his voice barely audible. Should have been more careful. He leaves as quickly as he came, and Miss Marple emerges, her mind racing. Is Dr. Haydock involved, or is he covering for someone else? Perhaps Amelia, whom he's been so attentive to. She returns to the cigarette case, deciding to leave it for the police to find, but she memorizes its position. Back in the manor, the atmosphere has grown heavier. Inspector Craddock is now questioning the vicar, who's explaining his garden walk as a need for spiritual reflection. Miss Marple, rejoining the group, catches his eye and notes his discomfort. She also sees Lady Eleanor speaking quietly with Mr. Blackwood near the staircase, their heads bent close together. It's an odd pairing. Blackwood's sly demeanour clashes with Lady Eleanor's icy poise. Are they conspiring, or merely commiserating? Miss Marple decides to test the waters. She approaches young Tommy, the footman, who's lingering near the kitchen door, looking more nervous than ever. "Tommy," she says gently, "you must have seen so much tonight, serving all those drinks. Did anyone linger near the punch bowl before the colonel's toast?" Tommy's eyes widen, and he stammers, "No, ma'am. I mean, I was busy. I didn't... Well, I saw Miss Amelia near it, but she was just getting a drink, I think." His words tumble out too fast, and Miss Marple smiles kindly, letting him think she's satisfied. But Amelia at the punch bowl, that's new, and it doesn't quite fit with her timid demeanour. As the night stretches on, Miss Marple finds a moment to speak with Inspector Craddock, mentioning the cigarette case in the garden without revealing the greenhouse discovery just yet. She wants to see how the pieces fall. The inspector, grateful for any lead, sends a constable to retrieve the case, and the room buzzes with renewed whispers as it's brought in, sealed in a cloth. "It's the colonel's, all right," Craddock confirms, frowning. "But what was it doing out there?" Miss Marple says nothing, but her mind is weaving connections. Amelia in the garden, the cyanide in the greenhouse, Dr. Haydock's secretive behaviour. The manor feels like a puzzle with missing pieces, each person holding a fragment of the truth. Miss Marple knows the garden holds more secrets, but she needs to tread carefully. The lace, the vial, the cigarette case. They're threads in a larger tapestry, and she's only begun to pull. As the guests grow restless, confined to the manor, she senses the killer is watching, waiting for a chance to cover their tracks. The clock chimes 1 in the morning, and Miss Marple settles back into her chair, her calm exterior masking a mind that's piecing together the night's discoveries. The garden has given her a start, but the real answers lie in the hearts of those around her. Next, we'll see her turn her attention to a surprising suspect as a new revelation threatens to unravel everything. Stick with me. This puzzle's getting twistier. Chapter 4. The Hidden Letter. The Hargrove Manor's grand hall feels like a pressure cooker now, with guests shifting uneasily under the weight of suspicion. The clock ticks past 1 in the morning, and the air is heavy with the scent of candle, wax and nervous anticipation. Miss Marple, ever the unobtrusive observer, has returned to her quiet corner, her eyes sharp behind her spectacles. The discovery of the cigarette case has stirred the room, and Inspector Craddock's men are bustling about, taking statements and searching for more evidence. But Miss Marple's mind is elsewhere. She's thinking about that scrap of lace in the greenhouse and Dr. Haydock's secretive handling of the cyanide vial. Something doesn't add up, and she's determined to find the next piece of the puzzle. She decides to explore the manor's library, a room adjacent to the ballroom where guests have been allowed to wander under supervision. The library is a grand space, lined with oak shelves stuffed with leather-bound books and the faint, musty smell of old paper. Miss Marple moves slowly, her fingers trailing along the shelves as if browsing, but her eyes are scanning for anything out of place. She's always believed that houses hold secrets as much as people do, and Hargrove Manor is no exception. Near a cushioned window seat, she notices a book, a worn copy of Pride and Prejudice, slightly askew, as if recently disturbed. She pulls it out, and, to her surprise, a folded letter slips from between the pages, fluttering to the floor. The letter is written in a hurried, elegant script, sealed with a dab of wax but no crest. Miss Marple, careful not to smudge any potential fingerprints, uses her handkerchief to pick it up. The letter is addressed to my dearest, and though unsigned, the contents are explosive. I cannot bear this any longer. You must tell him, or I will. The truth about the land deal cannot stay buried forever. Meet me tonight, by the greenhouse, before the toast. Her pulse quickens. This could be the motive she's been searching for. The Colonel's land disputes were well known, but this suggests someone close to him was planning a confrontation, perhaps one that turned deadly. She tucks the letter into her handbag, intending to share it with Inspector Craddock later, but not before she learns more. The mention of the greenhouse ties it to her earlier findings, and the handwriting, delicate, almost feminine, hints at someone like Lady Eleanor or perhaps Amelia. But could it be someone else entirely? Miss Marple recalls a village rumour about a shady land deal involving the Colonel and a neighbouring estate. Something about selling off farmland for a factory, which had angered many locals. Could this letter point to a betrayed partner in that deal? As she returns to the hall, she notices Amelia sitting alone again, her hands twisting a lace-trimmed handkerchief that looks strikingly similar to the scrap from the greenhouse. Miss Marple approaches, her voice soft as a summer breeze. Amelia, dear, you look troubled. Did you misplace something in the garden earlier? Amelia startles, her cheeks flushing. No, Miss Marple, I just needed air. The ballroom was so warm. Her eyes dart away, and Miss Marple notes the tremor in her voice. Amelia's hiding something, but is it fear or guilt? Meanwhile, Inspector Craddock is questioning Mr. Blackwood, whose slick demeanour is starting to crack. I was nowhere near the punch bowl, Inspector, Blackwood insists, his moustache twitching. I was discussing estate matters with Lady Eleanor. Miss Marple, overhearing, wonders about their earlier tete-a-tete by the staircase. Blackwood's notebook, she recalls, could hold records of those land deals, or something more incriminating. She makes a mental note to find a way to peek at it. The vicar, Reverend Clement, is now mingling with guests, offering words of comfort, but Miss Marple catches him glancing nervously at Dr. Haydock, who's been unusually quiet since his greenhouse visit. She decides to test the vicar's story. Approaching him with her usual disarming smile, she says, "Reverend, you must know. The Manor's gardens well from your visits here. Did you notice anything odd by the greenhouse tonight?" His face pales slightly, and he adjusts his collar. "The greenhouse? No, I was just walking the paths, praying for guidance." His answer is too quick, and Miss Marple senses he's holding back. As the night wears on, the inspector announces a search of the guests' belongings, hoping to find more clues. Miss Marple watches as Timothy Hargrove protests loudly, his voice rising. "This is outrageous. I'm family, not a criminal." But his agitation only draws more attention, and Miss Marple wonders if he's worried about something specific being found, like a debt ledger, or worse, traces of cyanide. She also notices Lady Eleanor watching the search with a calm that feels almost too perfect, as if she knows her secrets are safe. The letter burns in Miss Marple's mind. Its mention of the land deal and the greenhouse meeting suggests a planned confrontation, but who was meant to meet whom? Was the Colonel lured outside? Or was the poison an impulsive act inside the ballroom? She thinks back to the smudged glass, the open side door, and the cigarette case. The pieces are starting to form a picture, but it's still blurry, like a reflection in a rippled pond. As the search continues, Miss Marple slips back to the library, hoping to find more clues among the books. She's interrupted by a soft creak. The young footman, Tommy, is there, looking startled. "Oh, Miss Marple, I was just fetching a book for Lady Eleanor." His excuse is flimsy, and she notices his hands are still red, as if scrubbed raw. "Of course, Tommy," she says kindly, but her mind is racing. Is he covering for someone, or is he more involved than he seems? The Manor's secrets are piling up, and Miss Marple knows she's close to something big. The letter is a thread, but it leads to a tangle of motives: land, love, betrayal. She'll need to move carefully, for the killer is surely watching, waiting for her to get too close. As the clock nears 2, she returns to the hall, her calm facade hiding a mind that's knitting the clues together. Next, we'll see her confront a surprising suspect as the letter's secrets pull her deeper into the mystery. Stay tuned, this web is tightening. Chapter 5. The Confrontation. The Hargrove Manor is a hive of tension as the clock edges toward 2 in the morning. The grand hall, once vibrant with the glow of chandeliers, now feels oppressive, the air thick with whispered accusations and the rustle of nervous movement. Miss Marple sits quietly, her hands folded, her mind racing over the letter's cryptic words and the lace-trimmed handkerchief in Amelia's grasp. The greenhouse, the cigarette case, and now the letter. They're all threads, but she needs to tug the right one to unravel the truth. Tonight, she decides, it's time to stir the pot, to confront a suspect and see what shakes loose. Her eyes settle on Dr. Haydock, who's been hovering near the edge of the room, his usual confidence replaced by a guarded stillness. Miss Marple rises, her lavender dress swishing softly, and approaches the doctor as he stands by a tall window, staring out into the dark. "Dr. Haydock," she says, her voice gentle but firm. "Might I have a word? Somewhere private, perhaps." He hesitates, his jaw tightening, but nods, leading her to a small parlour off the main hall, where a single lamp casts a warm glow. over velvet curtains and a mahogany table. The door closes behind them, and Miss Marple wastes no time. "I saw you in the greenhouse, Doctor," she says plainly, her eyes locking onto his. "You took the cyanide vial. Care to explain why?" Dr. Haydock's face pales, and for a moment he looks like a cornered animal. "Miss Marple, I wasn't hiding anything sinister," he stammers, running a hand through his hair. "I found the vial out of place, near the door, not on the workbench where it's usually kept. I took it to keep it safe, to prevent anyone else from misusing it." His words are earnest, but Miss Marple notices the way his fingers fidget with his cufflinks. She presses gently. "And why not tell Inspector Craddock immediately? Surely a doctor knows the importance of evidence in a poisoning case." He sighs, slumping into a chair. "I didn't want to cause a panic, or point fingers prematurely. You know how quickly gossip spreads in St. Mary Mead. I thought perhaps Amelia had been in the greenhouse. She's been so distressed lately, and I didn't want her implicated without proof." Miss Marple raises an eyebrow. Amelia again. The doctor's protectiveness is clear. But is it love, or something more calculated? "Amelia was near the punch bowl, wasn't she?" Miss Marple asks softly. "And in the garden earlier. Did she tell you anything about tonight?" Dr. Haydock's eyes flicker with unease. "She said she needed air, that's all. She's been upset about her father's plans to sell the farmland. She loves this estate, Miss Marple. It's her home, but she'd never—" He trails off, as if unsure of his own words. Miss Marple nods, letting the silence stretch. People, she knows, often fill silences with truths they meant to hide. But Dr. Haydock clams up, his lips tight. Leaving the parlour, Miss Marple feels the weight of his words. The doctor's story is plausible, but it doesn't explain the lace or the letter. She decides to keep a closer eye on him, sensing he's holding back a piece of the puzzle. Back in the hall, the search of guests' belongings is wrapping up, with nothing significant found yet. Inspector Craddock looks frustrated, his moustache twitching as he confers with his constables. Miss Marple catches sight of Timothy Hargrove, now sitting sullenly by the fireplace, a glass of brandy in hand. His earlier protests have quieted, but his eyes are restless, darting toward the door. She approaches Timothy, her demeanour as disarming as ever. "You must be devastated, Timothy," she says kindly. "Your uncle was so proud of this estate." Timothy snorts, a bitter edge to his voice. Proud? He was obsessed with controlling it. And me. Always lecturing about my debts, threatening to cut me out of his will. His words are reckless, and Miss Marple notes the resentment simmering beneath. "Did you speak with him tonight?" she asks casually. Timothy's eyes narrow. "Briefly. He was too busy playing Lord of the Manor to care about me." But Miss Marple catches a fleeting look of guilt, or is it fear, before he turns away, as she moves through the room. Miss Marple overhears Lady Eleanor speaking sharply to a constable about the search. "My personal items are none of your concern," she snaps, her composure fraying. Miss Marple wonders about the letter's handwriting, so similar to Lady Eleanor's elegant script. Could she have written it, demanding a confrontation with her husband over the land deal? Or was it meant for someone else entirely? A sudden commotion draws her attention. The young footman, Tommy, is being questioned again, and he's visibly trembling. "I swear I didn't touch the punch bowl except to serve," he insists, but his voice cracks. Miss Marple notices Mrs. Price Ridley, the village gossip, watching Tommy with a knowing smirk. She sidles up to Miss Marple, her voice low. "That boy's been sneaking around the manor for weeks, you know. I saw him near the Colonel's study once, looking guilty as sin. Miss Marple nods politely, storing the tidbit away. Tommy's nervousness could be youth and fear, or something deeper. The night feels endless. The manor a labyrinth of half-truths. Miss Marple returns to her seat, her mind weaving connections. Dr. Haydock's secrecy, Timothy's resentment, Lady Eleanor's icy control, Tommy's fear. Each is a piece, but the picture is still incomplete. The letter's mention of the land deal keeps circling back, and she wonders if the key lies in the Colonel's business dealings, perhaps documented in Blackwood's elusive notebook. As the clock strikes 2, Miss Marple feels the killer's presence, like a shadow in the room. Her confrontation with Dr. Haydock has stirred something, and she senses the murderer is growing nervous. She'll need to act quickly before another move is made. Next, we'll follow her as she uncovers a shocking connection that ties the clues together, pulling her closer to the truth. Keep watching, this mystery's about to twist. Chapter 6. The Shocking Connection. The Hargrove Manor's Grand Hall feels like a stage where everyone's playing a part, their masks slipping as the night drags on. It's past 2 in the morning now, and the guests are weary, their faces drawn under the flickering chandeliers. Miss Marple, however, is wide awake, her mind buzzing with the threads she's gathered. The letter's cryptic warning, Dr. Haydock's secretive actions, and Amelia's nervous demeanour. But it's Mr. Silas Blackwood, the estate manager with his fox-like moustache, who's caught her attention now. His sly glances and that mysterious notebook tucked in his pocket suggest he knows more than he's letting on. Tonight, Miss Marple decides to chase a hunch, one that might tie the clues together. She slips into the manor's study, a dimly lit room where the Colonel handled his business affairs. The air smells of polished wood and old cigars, and a large desk dominates the space, littered with papers and a locked ledger. Miss Marple, ever cautious, doesn't touch anything but scans the desk carefully. A faint smudge of ink on a blotter catches her eye, and beside it, a crumpled receipt for a large sum paid to a company called Westfield Developments. She recalls village gossip about the Colonel's land deal. A plan to sell farmland to this very company for a factory, a move that enraged locals and even his own daughter Amelia. Could Blackwood, as estate manager, have been involved? Her thoughts are interrupted by a soft creak at the door. It's Blackwood himself, his face tightening when he sees her. "Miss Marple, what are you doing here?" he asks, his voice smooth but edged with suspicion. She smiles serenely. "Just admiring the Colonel's fine study, Mr. Blackwood. He was so proud of his estate's future, wasn't he? Especially that deal with Westfield Developments." Blackwood's eyes narrow, and his hand instinctively touches his pocket, where that notebook hides. "The Colonel's business was his own," he says curtly. "I only managed the accounts." But Miss Marple presses gently. Accounts can tell such stories, can't they? Like why a man might be angry enough to confront his employer, or why a deal might turn deadly. Blackwood stiffens, then forces a laugh. "You've been reading too many novels, Miss Marple." He leaves quickly, but not before she notices a bead of sweat on his brow. She's struck a nerve, and it confirms her suspicion. Blackwood's tied to the land deal, and the letter's mention of it points to a motive. As Craddock orders a constable to compare the handwriting to guests' statements, Miss Marple notices something new. Mrs. Price Ridley, the village gossip, whispering urgently to the vicar, Reverend Clement. Their conversation stops abruptly when they see her watching. Curious, Miss Marple approaches the vicar later, her tone light. "Reverend, you've been such a comfort tonight. Did Mrs. Price Ridley mention anything about the Colonel's plans for the estate? She always knows the village's pulse. The vicar fidgets, his collar tight. She mentioned the land deal upset many people, including some in the church council, but nothing specific. His unease tells Miss Marple he's holding back, perhaps protecting someone. Her thoughts turn to the receipt and the land deal. She recalls a detail from the village shop. Westfield Developments was linked to a man named Charles Grayson, a businessman who'd visited the manor months ago. Could he be the "my dearest" from the letter? Or was Blackwood working with him, perhaps skimming profits as the butcher's wife suggested? Miss Marple needs to see that notebook. She spots Blackwood slipping toward the servants' corridor and on impulse follows at a distance. He ducks into a small office, and through a crack in the door, she sees him pull out the notebook, scribbling furiously before tucking it into a drawer. Before she can decide her next move, a scream pierces the air from the hall. Miss Marple hurries back to find Amelia collapsed on the floor, sobbing, as Dr. Haydock kneels beside her. "She's fainted," he says, but his eyes are frantic. Miss Marple notices a crumpled note in Amelia's hand, similar in size to the one she found. As the doctor tends to her, Miss Marple gently retrieves the note, unfolding it discreetly. It reads, "Keep quiet, or you'll be next." Her heart skips. This is no coincidence. Someone's trying to silence Amelia, and it's connected to the letter and the land deal. The room buzzes with renewed panic, and Inspector Craddock takes the new note, his face grim. "This is getting out of hand," he mutters. Miss Marple, calm as ever, feels the pieces aligning. The land deal, the greenhouse, the threats, they all point to a conspiracy, and Blackwood's notebook might hold the key. But who's pulling the strings? Is it Blackwood, protecting his own interests, or someone closer to the Colonel, like Lady Eleanor, or even Amelia herself? As the night deepens, Miss Marple knows she's close to a breakthrough. The manor is a web of lies, and she's tugging at the threads that could unravel it. But the killer is watching, and that warning note means danger is closing in. Next, we'll see her dive into Blackwood's secrets as a bold move brings her face to face with the truth. Stay with me. This mystery's heating up. Chapter 7. Blackwood's Secrets. The Hargrove Manor feels like a house holding its breath, the grand hall now a dimly lit stage where every glance and whisper carries weight. It's nearing 3 in the morning, and the guests are fraying at the edges, some slumped in chairs, others pacing, their eyes darting as if the killer might strike again. Miss Marple, her lavender dress still pristine despite the long night, sits calmly, her mind a whirl of connections. The threatening note to Amelia, the land deal receipt, and Mr. Silas Blackwood's elusive notebook. That notebook, she's certain, holds answers, perhaps a record of the Colonel's dealings or something more damning. Tonight, she resolves to get a look at it, even if it means bending her usual propriety. The manor's servants' corridor, where she saw Blackwood slip away, is her target. She excuses herself from the hall, claiming a need for fresh air, and moves quietly toward the back of the house. The corridor is narrow, lined with faded wallpaper and lit by a single flickering bulb. The air smells of polish and damp stone, a stark contrast to the opulent ballroom. Miss Marple's steps are soft, her senses sharp. She reaches the small office where Blackwood hid his notebook, a cramped room with a desk, a few files and a locked drawer. The lock is simple, and Miss Marple, who once helped her nephew pick a lock during a youthful misadventure, knows a hairpin can work wonders. She hesitates. Snooping isn't her style. But the truth outweighs decorum tonight. Using a pin from her brooch, she carefully works the lock, her fingers steady despite her racing heart. The drawer clicks open, revealing the leather-bound notebook. She flips through it, her eyes scanning hastily scribbled figures, dates, sums, and cryptic initials. One entry stands out. Dated a month ago, it lists a payment of $5,000 to CG from Westfield Developments, marked consulting fee. Charles Grayson, she recalls, the businessman tied to the land deal. But another entry, from just last week, shows a transfer of $2,000 to Blackwood's personal account, labelled Commission. Miss Marple's lips purse. Commissions for estate managers are one thing, but this smells of skimming, or worse, blackmail. Her thoughts are interrupted by a shadow in the doorway. It's Blackwood, his face a mask of fury. "Miss Marple, what do you think you're doing?" His voice is low, dangerous, and he steps closer, blocking her exit. She closes the notebook calmly, meeting his gaze. "Just curious about the estate's finances, Mr. Blackwood. The Colonel's death seems tied to his business, don't you think?" Blackwood's mustache twitches, and for a moment she thinks he might lunge, but he forces a smile. "You're meddling in things you don't understand. That notebook's private. My records, nothing more." Miss Marple tilts her head, her voice soft but piercing. "Records of what exactly? Payments from Westfield Developments? Or perhaps something the Colonel discovered, something that led to a meeting by the greenhouse?" Blackwood's eyes widen, and she sees fear flicker beneath his bravado. "You're fishing, old woman," he snaps, but his hands tremble as he snatches the notebook. "Stay out of this, or you'll regret it." He storms out, leaving Miss Marple alone, her heart pounding, but her resolve stronger than ever. His threat mirrors the note to Amelia. Someone's desperate to keep secrets buried. Back in the hall, the atmosphere is electric with unease. Amelia, now recovered from her faint, sits with Dr. Haydock, who's whispering to her, his hand on hers. Miss Marple wonders if he's reassuring her or warning her. She catches Inspector Craddock's eye and decides it's time to share more. Approaching him, she mentions the notebook's contents without admitting how she found them. "Inspector, you might look into Mr. Blackwood's financial dealings with Westfield Developments. There's a payment to a CG that seems irregular." Craddock nods, intrigued. "Grayson, eh? We'll pull his records. And that letter's handwriting. It's close to Lady Eleanor's, but not quite. We're still checking." Miss Marple's mind races. The handwriting, the lace, the notebook. They all point to a web of deceit. She recalls seeing Lady Eleanor with Blackwood earlier, their heads bent together. Could they be in league, covering up the land deal's fallout? Or is Blackwood acting alone, using the deal to enrich himself? She decides to probe further, approaching Lady Eleanor, who's now sipping tea, her composure restored, but her eyes cold. "Lady Eleanor," Miss Marple says gently, "the Colonel's plans for the estate must have weighed heavily on you. Did you ever discuss the Westfield deal with him?" Lady Eleanor's cup clinks against its saucer. "My husband's business was his own," she says icily. "I concerned myself with the manner, not his schemes." But her fingers tighten around the cup, betraying her calm. Miss Marple notices Timothy Hargrove nearby, watching his aunt with a scowl. She recalls his bitterness about the Colonel's will. Could he have known about Blackwood's skimming and confronted his uncle? She approaches him next, her tone kind. "Timothy, you mentioned your uncle's control over the estate. Did he, ever speak of Mr. Blackwood's role in his plans? Timothy's eyes flash. Blackwood. He was always whispering in Uncle's ear, pushing that factory deal. I told him it'd ruin the village, but he didn't care. Said I'd get nothing if I kept arguing. His voice is raw, and Miss Marple senses truth mixed with anger. A sudden commotion draws her attention. A constable has found a small vial in the servants' quarters, not cyanide, but a sedative, hidden in Tommy's locker. The young footman, pale and stammering, insists it's not his. Someone planted it, I swear, he cries. Miss Marple watches closely, noting Mrs. Price Ridley's smug nod, as if she expected this. Could Tommy be a scapegoat, or is he deeper in this than he seems? The sedative raises new questions. Did someone drug the punch to mask the cyanide's taste? For eyes, Manor feels like a tightening noose, each clue pulling Miss Marple closer to danger. Blackwood's notebook confirms the land deal's shadiness, but it also points to a larger conspiracy. Charles Grayson, the mysterious CG, looms in her mind, someone she needs to investigate. As the clock ticks toward 3, she knows the killer is growing desperate, and that threatening note to Amelia was a warning to her as well. Next, we'll see Miss Marple take a risky step, confronting the heart of the conspiracy as a new clue threatens to expose the killer. Stay tuned. This mystery's about to unravel. Chapter 8. The Risky Step. The Hargrove Manor is a powder keg now, each tick of the clock amplifying the tension that crackles through the grand hall. It's well past 3 in the morning, and the guests are restless, their eyes heavy with fatigue, but sharp with suspicion. The chandeliers cast a weary glow, shadows dancing on the walls like ghosts of the night's secrets. Miss Marple, her lavender dress slightly creased but her mind razor-sharp, feels the weight of her discoveries. Blackwood's notebook with its damning entries, the threatening note to Amelia, and the lingering question of Charles Grayson's role in the land deal. She knows the killer is cornered, and the warning note suggests they're watching her every move. Tonight, she decides to take a bold risk, one that could expose the murderer or put her in grave danger. Miss Marple's instincts tell her the key lies in connecting the land deal to the greenhouse meeting mentioned in the letter. Charles Grayson, the mysterious CG from Blackwood's notebook, is a shadow in this mystery, and she needs to know more about him. She recalls a snippet of village gossip. Grayson stayed at the manor briefly last spring, charming Lady Eleanor and negotiating with the Colonel. Could he have been the intended recipient of the letter, or even present tonight, disguised among the guests? The thought sends a shiver down her spine, but Miss Marple is no stranger to danger. She's faced darker secrets in St. Mary Mead before. She decides to return to the study, hoping to find more about Westfield developments. Slipping away from the hall, she navigates the quiet corridors, her steps muffled by the thick rugs. The study is as she left it, the desk cluttered with papers. She sifts through them carefully, her fingers brushing over invoices, letters, and a map of the estate with sections marked for sale. One document catches her eye, a contract draft between the Colonel and Westfield Developments, signed by Charles Grayson. It details the sale of farmland for a factory, with a clause granting Blackwood a consulting fee far larger than standard. Her suspicion deepens. Blackwood wasn't just skimming, he was profiting massively, perhaps at the Colonel's expense. Faint noise, a floorboard creaking, makes her freeze. She slips behind a heavy curtain just as the door opens. It's Lady Eleanor, her face pale but composed, holding a small key. She moves to the desk, unlocks a hidden compartment, and pulls out a bundle of letters tied with ribbon. Miss Marple, barely breathing, watches as Lady Eleanor scans one letter, her lips trembling. "Oh, Reginald, why did you push so hard?" she whispers, her voice breaking. She tucks the letters into her shawl and leaves, unaware of Miss Marple's presence. The letters, Miss Marple realizes, could be the missing link. Perhaps love letters, or more likely, correspondence about the land deal that someone wanted buried. Heart pounding, Miss Marple emerges and decides to follow Lady Eleanor, keeping her distance. The widow moves toward the ballroom but pauses near the terrace door, glancing around before slipping outside. Miss Marple follows, the cold night air biting as she steps onto the terrace. Lady Eleanor heads toward the greenhouse, her shawl fluttering. Miss Marple, cautious but determined, trails her, staying in the shadows of the hedges. Inside the greenhouse, Lady Eleanor kneels by a potting bench, digging in the soil with her hands. She pulls out a small metal box, opens it, and extracts a single sheet of paper. Before Miss Marple can see more, a twig snaps under her foot, and Lady Eleanor whips around, her eyes wide with fear. "Who's there?" Lady Eleanor calls, her voice sharp. Miss Marple steps forward, her calm demeanour a stark contrast to the widow's panic. "Only me, Lady Eleanor," she says softly. "I couldn't help but wonder what brings you to the greenhouse at this hour." Lady Eleanor clutches the paper, her hands trembling. "This is none of your concern, Miss Marple. Leave me be." But her voice cracks, and Miss Marple presses gently. "Is that another letter about the land deal? Or something more personal, something worth killing for?" Lady Eleanor's face crumples, and for a moment Miss Marple thinks she'll confess. But she straightens, her icy composure returning. "You're meddling in dangerous waters," she warns, and hurries back to the manor. Miss Marple doesn't follow immediately. She examines the potting bench, finding traces of disturbed soil but no other clues. The box, now empty, suggests Lady Eleanor was hiding something critical. Back in the hall, the atmosphere is chaotic. Inspector Craddock has just announced that the sedative found in Tommy's locker matches traces in the punch bowl, deepening the mystery. Tommy, near tears, insists he's innocent, but the guests whisper, casting suspicious glances. Miss Marple catches Dr. Haydock watching Lady Eleanor, his expression unreadable. Could he know about her midnight errand? She approaches the vicar, Reverend Clement, who's been quieter since their last exchange. "Reverend," she says, her tone warm, "you mentioned the church council's concerns about the land deal. Did Charles Grayson ever attend those meetings?" The vicar hesitates, then nods. "Once, months ago. He promised jobs for the village, but some felt he was untrustworthy. His words are careful." And Miss Marple senses he's still protecting someone. Perhaps Lady Eleanor, or even himself. As dawn's first light creeps through the windows, Miss Marple feels the net closing. The letters, the greenhouse, the land, deal. They all point to a motive rooted in betrayal, but the killer's identity remains elusive. Lady Eleanor's actions suggest she's hiding more than grief, and Blackwood's notebook implicates him in a scheme that could have driven someone to murder. Miss Marple knows her risky step has rattled the killer, and she must move quickly, before they strike again. Next, we'll see her uncover a final clue that ties the manor's secrets together, bringing her face to face with the murderer's desperation. Stay with me. This mystery's reaching its peak. Chapter 9. The Final Clue. The Hargrove Manor is cloaked in the eerie stillness of pre-dawn. the grand hall now a shadow of its earlier vibrancy. The chandeliers flicker weakly, casting long wavering shadows across the weary guests, who slump in chairs or murmur in tight clusters. It's nearly 4 in the morning, and the air is thick with exhaustion and unspoken fears. Miss Marple, her lavender dress faintly rumpled, but her blue eyes as sharp as ever, feels the weight of the night's revelations. Lady Eleanor's hidden letters, Blackwood's shady dealings, and the threatening note to Amelia. The pieces are aligning, but one final clue is needed to reveal the killer. She senses the murderer is desperate now, rattled by her probing, and she must act swiftly to expose them before they slip away or strike again. Miss Marple's thoughts keep circling back to the greenhouse, the nexus of so many clues, the cigarette case, the cyanide vial, the lace, and now Lady Eleanor's secretive errand. She decides to revisit it, hoping to find what Lady Eleanor left behind. Slipping out to the terrace once more, she moves through the garden, the moonlight fading as dawn approaches, painting the hedges in soft greys. The greenhouse looms ahead, its glass panes glinting faintly. Inside, the air is still humid, heavy with the scent of orchids and earth. She heads to the potting bench where Lady Eleanor dug, her fingers probing the soil carefully. Beneath a thin layer of dirt, she finds a small, folded cloth, a silk glove, stained with a faint greenish residue that smells faintly of almonds. Cyanide, she realizes, her heart quickening. This glove could be the murder weapon's hiding place, used to handle the poison without leaving traces. As she tucks the glove into her handkerchief, a faint rustle comes from the far end of the greenhouse. Miss Marple freezes, her senses alert. It's Reverend Clement, his clerical collar askew, his face flushed as he steps from behind a row of plants. "Miss Marple!" he exclaims, his voice a mix of surprise and guilt. I was just checking the orchids. The Colonel was so proud of them." His excuse is flimsy, and Miss Marple's eyes narrow slightly. "At this hour, Reverend, and so soon after Lady Eleanor's visit." The vicar's hands twist together, and he stammers, "I saw her come out here. I thought perhaps she needed spiritual guidance." Miss Marple steps closer, her voice gentle but probing. "Or perhaps you were looking for something she hid, like this glove." She holds up the cloth-wrapped bundle, and the vicar's face pales. "I don't know anything about that," he protests, but his eyes dart to the door, as if planning an escape. Miss Marple softens her tone. "Reverend, you've been uneasy all night. If you know something about the land deal or the Colonel's death, now's the time to speak." He hesitates, then slumps, his voice low. "I overheard the Colonel arguing with Charles Grayson months ago. Grayson threatened to expose personal matters if the deal fell through. I told Lady Eleanor. She was distraught. But I swear, I had no part in this." The vicar's confession adds a new layer. Personal matters? Could Grayson have been blackmailing the Colonel, or even Lady Eleanor? Miss Marple files this away, letting the vicar leave, his steps hurried. Back in the hall, the mood is fractious. Inspector Craddock is questioning Tommy again, the young footman nearly in tears as he denies planting the sedative. Miss Marple catches Dr. Haydock watching the scene, his face tense. She approaches him, holding the glove discreetly. "Doctor, you're familiar with cyanide's properties. Would a glove like this protect someone handling it?" His eyes widen, and he nods slowly. "Yes, it could. Where did you find it?" She smiles faintly. "In the greenhouse, where secrets seem to grow as well as orchids." Her words are a calculated nudge, and Dr. Haydock's reaction, a quick glance at Amelia, tells her he's still protecting someone. She turns her attention to Amelia, who's sitting quietly, her lace-trimmed handkerchief crumpled in her lap. Miss Marple sits beside her, her voice kind. "Amelia, dear, that note you received, it frightened you. Did it come from someone you met in the garden? Someone who knew about your father's plans?" Amelia's eyes fill with tears, and she whispers, "I didn't mean to cause trouble. I overheard Father and Mr. Blackwood arguing about the land. Deal. I told someone, and they said to keep quiet." Her voice breaks, and Miss Marple pats her hand, sensing Amelia's fear but not guilt. The glove, the letters, the land deal, they all point to a conspiracy tighter than Miss Marple first thought. She approaches Inspector Craddock, handing him the glove wrapped in her handkerchief. "Inspector, this was in the greenhouse. It may have carried the cyanide." Craddock's eyes light up, and he calls for a constable to bag it as evidence. "This could be it, Miss Marple. But who does it belong to?" She doesn't answer, but her mind races. The glove's silk matches Lady Eleanor's elegance, but Amelia's lace and the vicar's nervousness keep her guessing. As she scans the A.E. room, she notices Blackwood whispering to Lady Eleanor, their heads close. Timothy nearby glares at them, his brandy glass empty. Miss Marple recalls the letter's handwriting, close to Lady Eleanor's but not exact. Could it be a forgery, meant to mislead? Or is Lady Eleanor playing a deeper game? The vicar's mention of Grayson's threats lingers, and Miss Marple wonders if he's the missing piece, a figure manipulating events from the shadows. The manor feels like a chessboard, the final move approaching. Miss Marple knows the glove is the last clue, tying the killer to the greenhouse and the poison. The killer's desperation is palpable, and she senses they're about to make a mistake. As dawn breaks, casting pale light through the windows, she prepares for the final confrontation, ready to expose the truth. Next, we'll see her gather the suspects, weaving the clues into a net that traps the murderer. Stay with me. This mystery's about to unravel completely. Chapter 10. The Truth. Unravelled, the Hargrove Manor is bathed in the pale light of dawn. The grand hall now a weary tableau of exhausted guests and flickering shadows. The clock nears 5 in the morning, and the air is thick with the weight of a long, tense night. Miss Marple, her lavender dress slightly wilted, but her blue eyes as sharp as a needle, stands quietly by the fireplace, her eyes scanning the room. The silk glove, the threatening note, Blackwood's notebook, Lady Eleanor's hidden letters, all the threads of this deadly tapestry are in her hands. She knows the killer is among them, their desperation palpable after her probing. It's time to weave the clues together and expose the murderer before they can slip away or strike again. She asks Inspector Craddock to gather everyone in the hall, her voice calm but firm. "I believe I can shed light on this tragedy," she says, and the room falls silent, all eyes on her. As the guests assemble, Lady Eleanor, pale but composed, Timothy, sullen and brandy-soaked, Amelia, trembling with fear, Dr. Haydock, tense, Blackwood, his moustache twitching, Reverend Clement fidgeting, and Tommy, the footman, wide-eyed. Miss Marple begins, her voice steady. Colonel Hargrove's death was no accident. It was a carefully planned murder, rooted in greed, betrayal, and secrets buried in this manner. Let's start with the poison, cyanide, slipped into his punch during the toast. The punch bowl was accessible to many, but the killer needed opportunity and motive. She holds up the silk glove, now in a police evidence bag. This glove, found in the greenhouse, carried the cyanide. Its silk suggests someone with refined tastes, but its presence near the Colonel's cigarette case and a scrap of lace pointed to a complex plot. She turns to Amelia, whose eyes widen. Amelia, you were in the garden, weren't you? Your handkerchief's lace matched the scrap I found, and you were near the punch bowl before the toast. Amelia gasps, tears spilling. I was in the garden, yes, but only to meet Dr. Haydock. I didn't touch the punch, I swear. Dr. Haydock steps forward, his face grim. She's telling the truth, Miss Marple. I met her to discuss her father's plans. She was upset about the land deal. Miss Marple nods, her gaze shifting to Lady Eleanor. And you, Lady Eleanor, were also in the greenhouse, hiding a letter. I saw you retrieve it from a buried box. Was it about the land deal with Westfield Developments or something more personal? Lady Eleanor's composure cracks, her hands trembling. It was a letter from Charles Grayson, she admits. He was pressuring Reginald to finalise the deal, threatening to expose an indiscretion of mine from years ago. But I didn't kill him. Miss Marple's eyes flicker to Blackwood, who's edging toward the door. Mr. Blackwood, your notebook told a different story. Payments from Westfield Developments, including a large commission to yourself and sums to C.G. Charles Grayson. You were skimming profits, weren't you? And when the Colonel discovered it, he confronted you. Blackwood's face hardens. You've no proof. I managed his accounts, nothing more. But Miss Marple presses on. The letter I found in the library, addressed to my dearest, spoke of a confrontation by the greenhouse. It wasn't Lady Eleanor's handwriting, though it mimicked hers. It was yours, Mr. Blackwood, wasn't it? You forged it to lure the Colonel outside, but when he didn't go, you poisoned his drink instead. The room gasps, and Blackwood's eyes dart wildly. Miss Marple continues, her voice unwavering. You had access to the cyanide in the greenhouse, and the glove, borrowed from Lady Eleanor's wardrobe to throw suspicion on her. The cigarette case, dropped in the garden, was a distraction, placed there to confuse us. And the sedative, in the punch, found in Tommy's locker. You planted it to frame him, knowing he'd been seen near the Colonel's study where you kept your shady records. Tommy sobs, shaking his head, and Inspector Craddock steps closer to Blackwood. His face stern. Miss Marple turns to the vicar. Reverend Clement, you knew about Grayson's threats to the Colonel, didn't you? You overheard their argument and told Lady Eleanor, but you also confided in Blackwood, thinking he was trustworthy. That gave him the leverage he needed. The vicar nods, shamefaced. I thought I was helping. I didn't know he'd use it against the Colonel. Finally, Miss Marple addresses Timothy. And you, Timothy, were angry about the estate's future, but your resentment was a distraction. Blackwood used your debts to cast suspicion on you, knowing you'd argue with your uncle publicly. Timothy slumps, relief mixing with guilt. Miss Marple's gaze returns to Blackwood. You planned to pin the murder on Lady Eleanor or Amelia, using the forged letter and the glove. The threatening note to Amelia was your final attempt to silence her, as she'd overheard your argument with the Colonel about the deal. Blackwood's facade crumbles, his voice rising. You can't prove any of this. It's all conjecture. But Inspector Craddock holds up the notebook, retrieved from the office. We've matched your handwriting to the letter, Blackwood, and the glove has traces of your cologne. You're under arrest. As Constable sees him, Blackwood struggles briefly, then sags, defeated. The room erupts in murmurs, relief washing over the guests. Miss Marple steps back, her work done. The manor feels lighter, the shadows lifting, with the dawn. Lady Eleanor weeps quietly. Amelia clings to Dr. Haydock. and Tommy wipes his eyes, vindicated. The Colonel's death, rooted in Blackwood's greed and betrayal, has been laid bare. As the police lead Blackwood away, Miss Marple gathers her shawl, her calm exterior hiding a quiet satisfaction. The truth, as always, was in the details, the small, human frailties she knows so well. And there you have it, folks. The mystery of the Harvest Ball solved. What did you think of Miss Marple's detective work? Drop a comment below and let me know who you suspected. If you enjoyed this tale, give it a like, subscribe for more mysteries, and hit that bell to stay updated. Thanks for joining me in St. Mary Mead. Until next time, keep your eyes sharp and your wits sharper.